Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 140 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I am Melisa Lieberman. I am a coach for independent consultants. And today we are talking about what to do, how to manage a dip in confidence when you invariably have that as an independent consultant. This seems to be really happening for a lot of you right now. And so I wanted to address it on this episode and give you some really practical, tangible, implementable, relatable tools that you can use to manage when this happens to you and to your business. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick update. I shared with you last week that I was leaving for a 3.5 day self-imposed retreat, essentially at a nearby hotel to write my book manuscript. And I did it. I wrote 60,000 words. The advice that I got from my editor, publisher slash coach was to write a shitty first draft. That is apparently an official term, an official publishing term, a shitty first draft. So I did that. And I'll create an episode about the experience of writing a book after it's published so I can share with you the full journey. But up until this point, I've now drafted the manuscript. I'm entering the editing phase. And I have to tell you, I have an enormous, what I'm going to call a writing hangover. When I left the hotel on Monday, which happened to be my birthday, so my husband came down to where I was staying and we went out for lunch. I was staying downtown in Colorado Springs where I live. So we went out for lunch and I just felt like I was released from the hospital when I had my appendix out. It was like this haze, this daze, and it's still partially there. So, anyway, that is what I've experienced to this point writing a book. It is kind of like getting your appendix out. But, it's great to not have it there either. So, just like having the manuscript done, it's fabulous, but it also feels really kind of discombobulating. Anyway, that is what is happening over here at Melisa Lieberman Coaching. And now we're going to transition over to this topic today that I think is so important to address because there are so many of you that I've been talking to or hearing from that feel this dip in confidence, whether it's something that has happened to you in your business that has shaken your confidence a little bit, or whether it's you and the phase of business that you're in, or perhaps you're even considering starting out as a consultant. You're an incredibly confident, professional, but this is something new. And so I want to address these different scenarios with you today for two reasons. Number one, to help you know that you are truly not alone in this and that so many other consultants, even if they're portraying such a confident outward energy and appearance, are really struggling with lack of confidence and insecurity at the same time. And so I want you to know that this is a normal part of the process and also give you those tools to help you manage through it so it doesn't have to create the same kind of hangover, almost like I was just describing to you, that I have from, it's not a confidence hangover, but it's definitely maybe a action hangover. So we want to make sure that you can address that feeling that you've got perhaps right now, which is some form or fashion of a dip in confidence, and help you overcome that in the moment and in general so that you can keep moving forward in your business toward your business goals. So that's why we are here today. Okay, before we talk about what the agenda is for today, let's talk about the companion resources. The companion resources, I want to remind you, I haven't done it in a while, and I was just looking at this the other day and it's really good if I don't say so myself, and I want to point you back out over to it. What it is the IC Toolkit. So it's the Independent Consultants Toolkit. It is a page on my website, and on there is about a dozen resources that will help you to strengthen your business foundation. So, a great tool on there that you can leverage right now is so timely is the yearly planning process, for example. That toolkit will also help you dial in your pricing. It will help you make your lead gen more consistent, and it will help you improve your consulting sales. So, even if you don't think you're a salesperson or you're bad at selling, so go over there, and they're all free resources. Go download those at ictoolkit.com. It will take you to my website, and you can find which resources you think would be most beneficial to you and download those and get going. So that is the two letters IC for independent consultant, toolkit.com. So that is the companion resource that goes with today's episode. Give you a lot of strategies that you can leverage, proven strategies to help you build your confidence. But really, today we're talking about you building the confidence from the inside out. And so let's start off from an agenda perspective and talk about the way we're going to tackle today's episode, today's topic of what to do when you're managing a dip in confidence as an independent consultant. So, first, I'm going to share with you three tools that you can use, very practical tools that you can use to rebuild and restore your self confidence and grow your self confidence. And then I'm going to share with you three real life consultant stories to help bring those tools to life so you can see how they're implemented, how they're leveraged, and probably see yourself in at least one, if not more, of those stories, just from a perspective of knowing other people are out there going through the same thing you are. And then finally, I will pull it all together for you so that you can implement it in your business for yourself to help grow your confidence and overcome those dips that invariably happen, which leads me to the bottom line of this episode. Before we dive into what those three tools are, what I really want to say to you is having a dip in confidence is normal. You may be a PhD. You may have multiple masters. You may have an MBA. You may have multiple degrees. You may have 20 or 30 years of experience. You may have an incredibly impressive resume. You may have the most amazing logos of clients that you've either worked at in your corporate past or worked for as a consultant. You may have all of those things, and yet you still may suffer from dips in confidence. It's normal. This is part of the process. First and foremost, you're a human, and so therefore it's normal. And also, you're doing something that a lot of people are not willing to do, which is you are responsible for your entire career, your entire profession, your entire professional life, your way of making money. You have chosen to run a business. Of course, that's going to create scenarios for you that test your confidence. And so today, I want to first off start this episode by saying this is very normal to have dips in confidence and be the bearer of bad news here that this is not going to go away. You will always have dips in confidence, no matter what your background or pedigree or all of those things we were just talking about are for you. This is normal and it's not going to go away. And quite frankly, if you end up in a spot where you never experience a dip in confidence again, it means that you're probably not pushing yourself far enough out of your comfort zone. You're playing small and you're not living up to your true full potential. The bottom line here is dips in confidence are normal, especially for you as an independent consultant, especially for you as a business owner. And if you're not having dips in confidence, then most likely you're playing smaller than you're capable of playing. And so I want to say that to you because given that this is a normal part of the process, we want to make sure that you have the tools to put into place so that you can rebuild that confidence when you need to, so that you can overcome anything that might have caused a dip in your confidence, and that ultimately you grow the confidence over time so that it is more expansive and easier to access when you need to. The one thing I'll tell you too, as we move into the heart of today's episode, is If you haven't listened to it yet, I would go back and listen to the episode on imposter syndrome. We'll put the link in the show notes. But this is such a good corollary. This episode and that episode are really good companions for each other. So go listen to that one as well. It also gives you very practical tools specific to imposter syndrome, which is a form of lack of self confidence. Okay, so now that you know that this is normal and it's not going to go away, and if you don't have dips in confidence, it's likely a problem for you in your business, not that you've reached the pinnacle. Now let's talk about what are those practical tools I promised I would share with you in order to build your confidence and grow your confidence and reestablish your confidence. The first one is that you want to get to the spot where you can take action, even if you're feeling a lack of self confidence. And I'm going to bring these to life for you here in a moment. We're just going to summarize them now, and then I'll bring them to life with those examples I shared with you. But so often we think about, well, I need to feel confident first before I do X, Y, or Z. I need to feel confident that I know how to sell my consulting services before I start generating a bunch of leads and I don't know what to do with them, for example. Or I need to feel more confident. I'm an introvert and need to feel more confident and capable before I'm willing to put myself out there into lead generation or networking type settings. The first tool that I want to share with you is that you've got to get to the place where you're taking action, even if you're feeling that lack of confidence. If you're waiting to feel confident before you take action, you're going to suppress your results in your business and likely struggle to meet your basic income requirements, let alone hit your revenue goals. The second is that you want to learn how to create confidence ahead of time. So, first, we're going to take action, even if we don't feel good, we don't feel confident. Second, we're going to learn how to create confidence ahead of time. So often we think, well, as soon as I make 250K in my business or 500K in my business, and I prove to myself that I can do it, then I can really feel rock solid confidence. And that's just simply not the case. In order to create those results, the 250K or the 500K or the million, you've got to be able to create that confidence ahead of time. And then thirdly, you want to be able to create the confidence on demand. You might be going into an important conversation that could either lead to a client, maybe a proposal meeting. It leads to a client or it leads to a loss of business. And you want to be able to create that confidence on demand. So those are the three high level tools, essentially. They're not tools. The three high level approaches, let's call them, to you creating confidence. You want to be able to take action, even if you're feeling the lack of confidence. You want to learn how to create confidence ahead of time before you have the evidence. And then thirdly, you want to have the ability to create confidence on demand. So those are the things you want to be able to do. Now I'm going to share with you how to do those using some examples for you. I always find hearing real life stories is one of the best ways to describe how to put these principles that we talk about on the podcast into action, and also to help you see that you are not alone in this, that you are not the only one experiencing these challenges. So, with that, let's first talk about the scenario where you've had a consulting business setback. So, maybe you're not making as much money as you anticipated, or a client ended their contract earlier than was initially agreed to, or that you expected, or maybe you lost a deal. That's the type of scenario I'm talking about right now. So let's talk about a real life example here of a client. I won't use any identifying information here, but this particular client of mine, so we're talking about a independent consultant who I work with. She came to me and as we were starting to work together and told me that, she's really frustrated. She had gone through a couple of sales processes that she didn't win the business. And the latest one before we started working together was a contract that she was 90% sure she would win, and she didn't. They went with another consultant. And she was devastated by this, obviously, and really scared what that meant for her future. Would she be able to sell this type of work? Did it mean that she just wasn't cut out for this? And of course, as you can imagine, when you think it's at like a 90% probability you would land a contract, of course, when you don't, like the situation was for her, it was a huge hit to her confidence. She had finally felt like she might be turning a corner. And then she had those series of losses. And this one in particular really just made her feel like she was going back to square one. And so she had tried to talk herself out of the problem, kind of a positive talk, self talk, and affirmations, telling herself it wasn't about her, but it just didn't work, right? When we try to talk ourselves out of things that we don't really believe, it is kind of putting lipstick on a pig, as they say. It's not really addressing the root cause of the problem. And so it really felt terrible to her. It didn't work trying this positive self talk. And so she was at this crossroads trying to figure out if she should go back to corporate, but even that felt like a big hill to climb because she would have to go into a job search, of course, and she needed to refill her pipeline and learn, figure out how to take it across the goal line. And it just to her felt like she had very little options. And of course, as you're running this type of decision and you're running this type of sales process from a place of devastation and fear and insecurity, of course, it's going to feel like there's nowhere to turn. And so for her, she wanted to continue consulting. That was her number one choice. She didn't want to go back to her plan B, which was returning to corporate. And she felt like the only way to restore her confidence and land a deal, land her a contract, was that it felt like a catch 22. She needed the confidence to rebuild the pipeline and land a deal, but she didn't feel like she could create the confidence until she landed the deal and rebuilt her pipeline and landed the deal. It would be in that order, right? And so it felt like this catch 22 to her. How would she be able to create this confidence that she needed without getting the result first? And so that's where I want to share with you this tool today. The first one, which is really figuring out how to create the confidence ahead of time so that you can do whatever it is that you need to do in your business. Just like this particular independent consultant needed to feel confident in order to rebuild her pipeline and ultimately land a deal. And so the very tangible tool that I will give you with respect to this that she implemented and worked so well for her to create this confidence, even before she had any evidence that she could land a deal successfully, is what I call the it's possible method. So, what we did was instead of her trying to create confidence by positive affirmations, what we did is we took the temperature down a little bit and said, okay, we need to create this confidence ahead of time. Our confidence comes from the way we're thinking about ourselves, the way we're thinking about our potential clients, the way we're thinking about what we're doing. And so rather than saying to ourselves in a self talk y way, I'm amazing at this, I definitely am great at sales, that's not believable, right? We implemented for her what I call the it's possible method. So she started rebuilding her confidence by intentionally thinking things like, it's possible I've learned what I need to know to make the next deal easier. It's possible I know what I'm doing. It's possible I'm better at this than I think. It's possible anything could land on my desk today or tomorrow. And through that type of thinking, that isn't unicorn type thinking. This is realistic, truthful thinking that she believes about herself and about her process. It shifted her lack of confidence into starting to rebuild that little kindling of confidence for herself. It started with just being open to the process. We don't have to go from insecure and feeling inadequate to boldly confident. We just have to start moving the dial over a little bit toward boldly confident by creating emotions such as feeling open. It's possible I know what I'm doing. It's possible I've learned what I need to know to make the next deal easier. When you think those types of thoughts, Doesn't it shift in your body, even that emotion of feeling really closed off and worried and scared to open and willing to explore the possibilities and get back out there and start working again so that you can overcome that consulting business setback like she did? Ultimately, she put this it's possible method into place. It opened up the ability for her to start networking again, start lead generating again, to have multiple deals in her pipeline so she wasn't beholden to one of them closing. And ultimately, her closing business because she was able to restore her confidence in this incremental way, very tangible way that I'm sharing with you. The second example I want to share with you to bring as a way to share a very specific tool for you to implement for yourself so that you are increasing your confidence, recreating your confidence. The second story I want to share with you is one of a someone who's returning as a consultant. So this particular person had been in corporate and then they went out on their own as a consultant, and for a variety of reasons they went back to corporate for a while, and then they were pushed out of that job. They had reached a very senior level in their organization, and the leadership started to change, and they were pushed out of that organization. And this is so common. This is so common. I talk to consultants so often that this situation has happened and they're devastated and scared. This particular person had built an entire portfolio, entire career track record, and was shocked that he was one of the ones who was pushed out. It was an incredible hit to his confidence, and it really put him at a crossroads questioning his future. But it also gave him the signs, if you will, that this was time to go back to consulting. What he had started, several years ago and left, this was now time to go back. And he took this situation as a sign that it was time to go back to consulting. And he had been a consultant before, so it wasn't so foreign. He felt like he knew what he needed to do to relaunch his consulting business, but it also felt really hard doing what needed to be done to relaunch his business. And it felt hard mostly because he was embarrassed. He was worried what people would think about him and his choice to go back into consulting instead of back into his, corporate career and the ladder he had been climbing. He wondered if people were going to think he was washed up and this was his only option to now go consult. He doubted himself, and if the way he described it was had his time passed, and if his corporate career had reached a pinnacle and now his time had passed. And he wondered now if he even knew enough to be a successful consultant. He was doubting whether he could make run at his consulting business a sustainable one compared to last time, and just was swimming in this self-doubt and insecurity. Again, if you look at what he has on paper, you would never imagine that he would be in this spot where he was experiencing such a dip in his self confidence. For him, he thought, as we were talking about it, and I asked him, what do you think the solution is to this? His only answer that he could come up with for himself was, I've just got to power through. I've got to power through and do this, kind of like we were talking about earlier, feeling lack of confidence and doing it anyway. But for him, he was just having a hard time mustering up the strength and the energy to even take that first step because of all of those reasons, right? When you're thinking you're washed up or you've hit your pinnacle and it's all downhill from here, of course you're going to have a harder time mustering up the strength and energy to get going with your business relaunch, for example. And so for him, what we did for his to start rebuilding his confidence little by little. This isn't going from 0 to 60 here in the matter of hours or even days or even weeks. This is how do we rebuild your confidence little by little so you can take that action and move forward, even though you don't feel good, even though you feel insecure and self doubt and questioning. And so the very tangible tool that we worked on is what I call the can I just method. Can I just? Can I just schedule 3 calls for next week? 3 calls, that's 90 minutes in an entire week. Can I just instill confidence in myself for 15 minutes? We're not talking about, can I become confident all over again? We're talking about, can I just instill confidence in myself ahead of time for just the next 30 minutes? Or another example, can I just feel curious as I re engage my network? So rather than even trying to get yourself into confidence, get yourself into curiosity. For the next 30 minutes or prior to a call for him, he would say to himself, can I just feel curious for the next 30 minutes while I have this call and really make it about the other person that I'm talking to and hearing about what their challenges are as they're, running their business unit, and make it about them and not about me, as a way to create a connection in that conversation. Another example of the can I just method, can I just think about this thing for 30 minutes? Again, can I just think about how I might want to generate leads for my business for the next 30 minutes? And then I can stop and go back to whatever feels the bad feeling, even, but just for 30 minutes. Can I just? This is a fabulous tool, a very tangible, simple tool, but an impactful tool for you to get to the place where, even though you feel a dip in your confidence right now, something happened and you're feeling a dip in your confidence, you can leverage this tool to create that ability to keep going forward anyway and make some momentum for yourself. Okay, the last example here I want to share with you. This is a scenario where you might just be starting out as a consultant. You might not have had any professional consulting experience. You may have never run a business before. You might have just be starting out as a consultant. And so, of course, if you're brand new to something, even if you have 20 or 30 years of industry experience, or 10 or 20 years of consulting experience working for another consulting company, now you're starting something brand new if you're in this spot. And so, for so many of you that I talk to at a crossroads, kind of deciding, do I want to become a consultant? I'm not sure if this is the best path for me. And, I've had a lot of experience in a corporate setting, but I just don't know if I would be good at it from a consulting perspective. Industry is different than consulting. Will I be good at it? I was working with a consultant, a potential consultant. They were coming back and forth to me, trying to decide if they wanted to become a consultant or not, and really lingering in indecision for months and months. They just couldn't decide what they wanted to do. And so I asked them, what do you need to know, or what do you need to feel in order to make a final decision about what you're going to do? Either do it or don't do it, but definitely don't stay on the fence, because that's not a good place for any of us to be. And so what she said to me is, I think I just really want to feel clear. I want to feel clarity. I want to feel really certain. I want to feel confident before I dive into this endeavor, because if I decide to do it, I know I'm the type of person who will do nothing short of making it successful. And so she was just stuck on this fence. And the truth was, she wanted to start a consulting business, but she was afraid. The truth was, she wanted assurance ahead of time that it was going to be successful, that she was going to be successful starting and running a consulting business. And she wanted to feel confident that it would work before she took the plunge. But that's not how life is. That's not how business is. There are no assurances. And so, what we worked on together is what I like to call just the next step method. What we decided is, let's make a decision first and foremost. And her decision was, I want to move forward with creating a consulting business. And I'm okay. I understand that I can't, there are no assurances. But for her, she had to create the confidence as she went. And again, it's something new. So, of course, you're not going to feel confident right away. And so we implemented what I call this just the next step method to help her create her confidence, almost as if you're, imagine walking up a staircase where you're creating that confidence one step at a time. It's so common to be weighed down by all the new things you need to learn and the doubt of whether they're going to work or not. And just this next step method helps you to contain it. And the way that it looks is, or the way that it sounds is, I can figure out the next step. You don't need to figure out your entire business from beginning to end of what you're offering, how you're offering it, to whom you're offering it, how you're going to generate leads, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to deliver it. So often we want to know all of those answers before we even get started. And that's where we get stuck because the self-doubt and the questioning and the insecurities can take root in all of those different steps so easily. And so this just the next step method that I helped this particular consultant implement it looked like this. She started saying to herself and implementing this, I can figure out the next step. First, I'm going to master getting people, potential clients or potential connectors to clients on calls. That's it. I'm going to master getting people on calls. I'm going to figure out that step of how to get someone on the call and get really good. And that wasn't a long process. It maybe took her a couple of days to figure out, okay, what's holding me back? What am I worried about? Overcoming that and getting really good at booking calls. So then she had a calendar full of calls, networking calls, connection calls, referral calls, things like that. And then she said to herself, okay, I'm going to get really good at describing what I do. When someone asks me, what do you do? I'm going to get really good at describing that. So for a few more days and a few testing out on calls where it didn't go so well and other times where it did go really well, she got to the place where she had really mastered describing what it is that she does. And then she went on to the next step. Again, just the next step method. Her next mini step was I'm going to master connecting with people on those calls, really making a true connection where it doesn't feel so transactional, where there's a true interest in helping one another and figuring out where opportunities might lie and creating that kind of connection, even when they're strangers. So that's what she focused on. After that, then she focused on, I'm going to master turning calls into opportunities. So now she's got all these calls going on. She's getting more confident about describing what she does and really connecting with the person and going back and forth and figuring out how there may be alignment with that individual that she's talking to. And then she started figuring out, how am I going to master turning those calls into opportunities to fill my pipeline? And then after she did that, then she focused on, I'm going to master this initial discovery meeting, and so on and so on, step by step by step. This does not have to take a long time. What I was just describing to you might sound like months and months. We're talking about, in some cases, days and days or weeks and weeks. Definitely not months and months, but really focusing on those micro steps and figuring out that, using that just the next step method so that you can build that confidence step by step, little by little. You don't need overall confidence of, I know exactly what I'm doing from soup to nuts as a business owner, no matter what stage of business you're in. This example I'm giving you is a brand new business owner, but this applies to any stage of business. Building up that confidence step by step by step, refining and iterating and getting to the place where you're really good at it and can almost feel like, oh, I've got that box checked off. Now I can move on to the next skill that I want to develop. So those are 3 examples and 3 very tangible tools that you can leverage in order to navigate the scenario where you have a dip in your confidence. We talked about the importance of taking action, even if you're feeling a lack of confidence, and using these tools to do that. You can leverage the tool of, can I just, in order to take action, even if you're feeling that lack of self-confidence. You want to be able to learn how to create that confidence ahead of time by leveraging that it's possible method. It's possible. I know what I'm doing. It's possible that just because that last client didn't land, that it doesn't mean that anything about my future. Learn to create that confidence ahead of time. And then implement the tools to create the confidence on demand, like just the next step method. I'm just going to master this one thing. And I know for sure when I build upon and build upon and build upon all of these skills, I'm going to get where I want to be no matter what. Those are the tools that you leverage to create that confidence and overcome a dip that you might be having in confidence, whether it is created by something that happened in your business, something that happened in your professional life in general, or even because you're doing something that's new to you, whether you're launching a business or launching a new offering or working with a slightly different type of client or going directly to a client to work with them instead of through a third party. These are the tools that you can leverage to create that confidence ahead of time and get where you want to go faster and more effectively. So that's what I have for you today. This is really important work. So often we overlook this type of mindset work when we're running our businesses because we have this whole long list of to-do lists and we just think that the mindset stuff is fluffy and not as important. But I can assure you, as someone who really resisted working on mindset for a really long time at the expense of, I want to check all this stuff off my list, I'll deal with my mindset later, or it's not really that important, I can assure you that is not the truth. When you get to the place where you're shifted your mindset and figured out the root cause of what might be slowing you down or making you hesitate or creating resistance or making you avoid doing something that you ultimately logically know is important, it all comes from your mindset. And that's the root cause you want to address. And if you're looking for help with that, with really tackling both your strategy and your mindset in order to get your business where you want it to be, I highly recommend you book a call with me. It's a free consultation. We'll talk about you and your specific goals, where your mindset gaps are, and identify those, and then figure out if coaching together would be a good fit. So you can find a link to my calendar at consultmelisa.com. My name is spelled Melisa, consultmelisa.com. And I look forward to seeing you on my calendar and meeting with you and hearing your specific scenario so that we can help you get past it and move forward toward the business that you can't wait to have. All right, my friend, thanks for tuning in this week, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.